recovery. September is Recovery Month. It's time to celebrate those in recovery and to spread the message that prevention works, that treatment is effective, and that people recover every day, not just here in Lssen County, but around the country. The Lssen County Behavioral Health Department asks the community to join with them and the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, and the White House Office of National Drug Control Policy in celebrating Recovery Month by participating in our programs and activities that we have planned around the county this month. And please come out and join us at Memorial Park on Saturday, September 28th, where we're going to have Recovery Happens Family Day. We're going to have a baseball game and barbecue and all kinds of activities for kids and adults, and it should be a lot of fun. It's a great way to celebrate recovery. If you'd like, I would be happy to read the proclamation for you. Whereas behavioral health is an essential part of one's overall health and wellness, and whereas prevention of mental illness and or substance use disorders works, treatment is effective, and people recover in our area and around the nation, and whereas preventing and overcoming mental illness and or substance use disorders is essential to achieving healthy lifestyles, both physically and emotionally, and whereas relatives and friends of people with mental illness and or substance use disorders must be encouraged to implement preventive measures, recognize the signs of a problem, and guide those in need to appropriate treatment and recovery support services. And whereas, according to the 2011 National Survey on Drug Use and Health, 2.3 million people aged 12 or older received special treatment for a substance use disorder, and 31.6 million adults aged 18 or older received mental health services in 2011. And whereas, to help more people achieve and sustain long-term recovery, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, the White House Office of National Drug Control Policy, and the Lssen County Behavioral Health Department invite everyone to participate in Recovery Month. Now, therefore, I have Jack there, I hope that's the case, Chairman of the Board of Supervisors, County of Lssen, do hereby proclaim the month of September 2013 to be Recovery Month in Lssen County, and call upon the residents of the county to observe this month with appropriate programs, activities, and ceremonies, and to support this year's annual Recovery Happens Family Day on Saturday, September 28th in Susanville's Memorial Park.
Thank you, Melanie. Have you have a motion to approve? A motion, Mary, Jim, second. Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye. Opposed, say no. Ayes have it. Thank you, Melanie.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll go next to County Council assignment and assumption agreement between Dyer Mountain and LLC and Sierra Pacific Industries.
Yes, Chairman, I'm just asking that you receive and authorize the chairman to sign the assumption and assignment and assumption agreement between the two. It's just, we're not a party to the sale, we're just asking that we acknowledge and consent to the assignment and assumption from SPI and Dyer Mountain Management.
Thank you. Questions from the board? Seeing none, questions from the public? Seeing none. Okay, we have a motion to approve this agreement.
I move to authorize the chairman to sign the assumption agreement.
Second?
Second.
Second, Mary?
Does this indicator mean that SBI are deeper pockets than Dyer Mountain?
Wow. Well, Dyer Management's parent company, it was in the bankruptcy court, so I would take from that yes, SPI probably is more financially secure.
I think that'd be a good guess.
So their-
Boy, is that a
so-
hesitating answer.
So their ability to perform on the contractual commitments is better positioned? Just checking.
Any more questions from the board? Public, seeing none? Okay, do we have a motion? You have a motion in a second, okay. Any more discussion? If not, Madam Clerk, would you pull the board?
Supervisor Chapman?
Aye.
Supervisor Alba?
Aye.
Supervisor Wasser?
Aye.
Supervisor Kyle?
Aye. Thank you. Okay. We'll go down to County Administrative Office, Pool Joint Powers Agreement, Construction Financing. Marty?
Members, in last week's budget would be in the process to finance the pool, so today I wanted to discuss and get direction from you on how we are going to govern that process and ultimately finance the construction of the pool. You have a staff report listing several of the items, and so what I tend to do is just kind of take them one by one and have a conversation and move on. I mean, the first basic issue is what is going to be the agency or the agreement that funds the pool.
On a basic issue, what would the city ever do? Did the city go forward with their half of the deal as far as passing it on their side of their budget?
As far as I know, the city had a conversation on the joint powers agreement last night. They've had a policy discussion whereby they've made an agreement to finance the pool, but I don't think they've actually taken the budget action to appropriate money.
They directed the county, I mean, the city administrator at their last meeting to come back to them with where in their budget they would have the $200,000 to come in. So that, their next meeting won't be until October the 2nd. And I think at that meeting is where they plan to take that issue up and take that action.
So they're all on board with this?
Yeah, they from going back to June when they adopted their budget, and they actually discussed back then the prospect of a joint, operation or joint program, and they were on record back then to support that if the county was to come through. So I doubt seriously that they're going to not do that. And so they actually had a discussion kind of like today, that, in their last meeting last Wednesday, reviewing this draft JPA that Marty and Jared had put together. And some of the questions that they raised are some of the questions I'm going to ask too, so.
We are not asking you to take any action today. Today is just kind of a discussion of the issues so that I can kind of get your general direction on some of these questions, and then that would eventually result in some sort of agreement between the city and the county being prepared that would be for action by both bodies.
I think the idea is that they're also working on and giving Jared direction on this as we need to do to Marty. And then they'll have to meet over the next few weeks, and probably at their meeting of October 2nd, they review the JPA, and we'll have an opportunity, hopefully, at our first meeting in October. The idea being is that if we can come to agreement on a final draft, both bodies, that by mid-October, maybe we could be in a position of adopting the resolution to establish the JPA. But there's still work to be done on this. And in the meantime, they obviously will have the opportunity and need to appropriate their share of the funds, and if they fail to do that, then the JPA issue is kind of moot. So we'll have to see. Now there is time for them to do it, so we'll see what they do. But I think all indications are they plan on doing it.
Okay, Marty, you
The first fundamental issue is what kind of agreement should be prepared between the city and the county to proceed with this project. We use the term JPA, but those initials can actually have two separate meanings. So one is a joint powers agreement, and the second meaning of that acronym is a joint powers authority. If you are to form a joint powers authority, it gets formed by the signing of a joint powers agreement. But there is an option for two agencies to get together and just sign a joint powers agreement to operate in tandem with each other without forming a separate agency. A JPA is technically a new unit of government, independent of the bodies that created it. California state law says that if two entities share a power in common, in other words, they both have the authority to do something, in this case, build and operate a pool, they can form a joint powers agency to exercise that power in an agreement. Joint powers authorities are very common. We belong to several here in the county, and we've had conversations about the pros and cons of those in the past. The downside of a joint powers authority is it is an independent unit of government. It is technically independent from the Board of Supervisors, but theoretically, can bind the members to costs. Now, there was a bad situation, south of us here between Sierra and Nevada counties, where the JPA board granted a bunch of benefits to its employees, and then it went out of business, leaving the two counties holding the bag. That's uncommon type of thing, but there are those kind of risks to authority. So I kind of, the first fundamental policy question is, are we gonna form a joint powers authority, or are we just gonna enter into a joint powers agreement with the city?
Marty, just for clarification, you have here a joint powers agency, that's the same as authority.
AG authority, I'm sorry, yeah, the terms are synonymous.
Okay, just want to be sure.
So, kind of looking for a discussion on that basic question.
I have one question along that line tonight, and I think this is good that we're having the discussion, because we do belong to a number of JPAs, and they function all over the map, and one of the concerns I've had with the JPAs we've had to deal with, I mean, we got like our NORTEC group with the job training funding and program, that's a JPA, and we have a JPA with planning and service area for our area agency on aging, and those two kind of function in a more of an independent fashion, where once they're up and running, it's, it's kind of a loose tiger, but yet there's potential for financial repercussions back to the county. The NorCal Medical, EMS, Emergency Medical Services, is another one that kind of functions, and that's the kind of...
That's not a JPA. That's actually a nonprofit corporation, so it's a little...
Right, it is a nonprofit.
Okay, well that, I stand corrected in that respect, but in terms of the fact that they kind of operate independent, then you have, things like our solid waste authority that we have here between the city and the county. We have air pollution. I mean, there are several that we function locally, and some in terms of in-house with existing staff, or others will have an independent staff. LAFCO is another de facto shared authority that we function and operate with. So we've got a lot of models to choose from. What I was kind of envisioning that we, with this discussion, was that we would have something kind of like similar to our solid waste authority. But the concern I have, and it goes back to the back page, is, and this would be on page 6, dealing with termination, amendments, and withdrawal, and how that's written, is you can set this up and you turn them loose, and then they can go ahead and morph into whatever sort of entity they desire to do. The only connection you have is the fact that you have 2 members of this board and 2 members of the city council that would be, hopefully keep them somewhat within bounds in terms of what they're doing. I think when it comes to like the JPA that we have for the NorTec, the job training program, is that governing board that is constituted there amongst the 11 counties, as one board member from each of the 11 counties serving on, doesn't have the power to amend and change the JPA. In other words, when a new county is added, or a county drops off, whatever, each of the 11 boards of supervisors basically have to ratify and approve that change. In other words, the amending process and the dissolution process, which would terminate the program, would take place by the individual boards of supervisors. And to me, I think this JPA, if we set it up, I would prefer to see it that if there is in the future, just as you were saying, they could jack up everybody's salary, vote to go out of business and stick you with the bill. That's what you're inviting when you have this kind of authority being granted to them to make under Articles 11, 12, and 13. Is I think that with this JPA, if it does function, they basically are functioning as our agents working in common, in a separate agency that is separate from the county, separate from the city. But if they're going to make any changes, or they're going to do anything different, then they need to bring that back to the respective boards. So those who create are the ones who can change, not themselves directly. And along that lines, when you go back to page 2, we're under section 4, and I think there's also provisions in section 7 on page 3 that deal with the 5th member. So you have the 2 from the city and the 2 from the county, and the 4 of them get together and appoint the 5th member. That's what we do with solid waste as an example. And that's kind of what we do also with LAFCO, is that the existing, representatives from the 2 agencies select the public member. But they're, like for a fixed term. This here, once they're picked, it doesn't say, how long do they serve, and the 2 city reps serve at the pleasure of the city council that appoints them, and the 2 county reps serve at the pleasure of the board of supervisors that appoints them. But the public member, it doesn't say who does it, how long do they serve, and do they serve at the pleasure of the four, or what? I mean, it's like, I mean, it's kind of like being chosen pope or something. You do it until you die or something, or move away. And I think that we need to quantify that in terms of, you know, maybe giving it a specific term. So like in the case of the LAFCO public member, I think they serve a 4-year term once they're appointed, but periodically they have to be reappointed by whoever the sitting 4 members are. And if there's a provision to remove you know, do they serve at the pleasure of those 4, so if something happens and the 4 doesn't like the ones that they had selected, or maybe some 4 new people get appointed by the 2 governing bodies, the city and the county, and those 4 want to see the 5th person changed or removed. I mean, what are those kind of provisions? None of that really is outlined here. It's kind of like a black hole they shoot off to. So I think as far as maintaining, you know, the accountability of the way the board functions, you know, as well as respecting the relationship, they're doing this task basically as agents of the city and the county in terms of getting this job done. And so I think we want to keep that relatively close so that whatever they do, you know, they do it, you know, representing 4 or 5 of us here and the 5 across the street, rather than being, you know, independent and maybe eventually could go rogue, using that term that's been popularized in recent years.
So I interpret your comments to be that you favor a joint powers agency authority over a simple joint powers agreement.
Well, I think it needs to be a separate entity that functions separate of the city and the county operation, but I think that there still has to be strong ties. They're doing that on our behalf with a specific guideline. And the other thing about the agreement is, you know, the whole purpose of this is because of the swimming pool, but there are a lot of recitals and incorporation here in terms of dealing with other recreation activities well beyond what a pool is. And maybe down the road at some point, this could evolve into maybe become a recreation district or something. That's fine. But that's kind of lost in this. It's pretty complex, and I think we need to try to make it a little bit simpler. You know, this is about building a pool. It's not about assuming all these other extraordinary recreation expectations. I'm not saying that maybe in time the 2 boards will want to amend this, and I think maybe we should have a door available if they want to open it to allow you know, to allow the expansion of it, kind of like what we do with a community service district. You know, they have basic services they provide, but we can also amend there's like a long list of services they're eligible to do, but not every community service district does all those services. But if they want to assume extra services, they go back to LAFCO, make their case, we want to do fire, or we want to do water, or whatever it is, that they aren't already chartered to do, and you add that service to them, and they provide a plan and show how they can do it and how it's cost effective and where they're going to get their monies to do it. So I think in this case, you know, we're kind of getting a little bit of the cart before the horse. We're kind of projecting what this agency might be like 15 years from now, and then we just kind of throw, you know, they list all the things they do, and then it goes, and do a pool. Well, I think we should say, let's do a pool, and if you do anything, and do maybe something else if it becomes feasible later on. And so we kind of like, I think, need to kind of flip it around. And so I know what you're intending to do here, and I think it's good, but I think we're kind of like making it too complex that way.
Mr. Chairman, is there a consensus of the board then that we're going to pursue the joint powers agency as opposed to the agreement?
Well, I'm just thinking, because it talks in here about other entities that want to come in. Say the college wants to come in, and the high school wants to come in. I don't know which way would be the best to add new members to this as we're moving forward. Which one of these would be the best? I don't know.
That option would only be available, well, technically only available to joint powers agency. You know.
Yeah,
That's what you're talking about.
and that's what we're talking about. But I think rather than these guys empowering themselves to just automatically cut a deal with a college or a high school or whoever, it would require, just like we did with Nortec. We were a 9-county entity, and Sierra County wanted to join, and eventually Nevada County had to join. So we had to amend, each of the boards of supervisors had to vote to amend the JPA to include those other counties to participate. In this case, we would have this basic agreement with the city. If down the road or early on, whatever the case may be, the college that says we would like to be a part of the Joint Powers Authority, and they have equal standing as far as the law is concerned to be able to do that, it would require an amendment then to the JPA voted on by this board and the city council to allow them to join, not this board, once we constitute, have to go out on its own. So, yeah, I think you have to have a provision that if you have an entity that would be appropriate to add, and they bring resources to the table, and they're going to be a functioning member, not just come in and tell us how to spend our money, but actually contribute to it, then I think we're better served if we invite them and allow them to join. But we need to control that with the boards, not by this independent body doing its own thing. And that's, right now, the way this is written, it's kind of more, they would do the thing, and once we wind them up and turn them loose, we pretty much, have not a whole lot to do with it other than writing them a check every year for $200,000. I think we need to be a little bit more,
Okay. Consensus sounds like.
Consensus on forming the Joint Powers Agency.
Yeah, so if the governance is exclusively between the city and the county, what would that?
Well, then, okay, if we move down the direction of the agency, then the first policy question is, and it is written, you want to write that so other agencies can join.
I think the option should be provided, but I don't think we can give it as much, you've got a lot of emphasis in how to do that. I mean, several sections and subsections in terms of how that's added, and so I think we just need to narrow it down. That, if the case arises and the resources would be available, that yes, that would be something, but it would require an amendment to the JPA by the two constituting authorities to allow the other parties to join.
My thought, of course, is to be reasonably precise in there, because I think the basic philosophy that we talked about is a pay or play one. If you want to
Right.
join, you got to contribute to the
Sure.
pool. And that's kind of what I'm trying to say here.
Okay, well, if that's what you're trying to say, I'll go with it. I mean, I think we should allow for that, but I don't think that should be the emphasis.
Okay, so, I'm sorry, Supervisor.
Well, my other question is how hard is this gonna be to get out? Because I don't think the county needs to be in the pool business forever. I mean, how are we gonna get out of this? How hard is this gonna be to dissolve?
It sunsets in 15 years.
Yeah.
It sunsets. So at that point, there has to be a succession plan that they'll define. And at that point in time, if they don't come up with one and we don't have one, theoretically, the
Goes out of
pool,
business.
just like the pool you have now got closed, the new pool would be closed, and it will be really incumbent upon, I think, the public at large to give whatever direction. My feeling is that over the next 15 years, this is a very limiting, confining organizational structure by design. And the idea being is that if the program grows and the community invests itself in it, they're going to want to supersede that with something that, and then they'll take on that responsibility and fund it and come up with a way to do it. This is just to kind of get things rolling. So in 15 years, if there hasn't been any evolution beyond that point, then, the board in 15 years now can decide if they want to continue to pay for it after that point, or we're done.
Well, that's just.
Supervisor, if you have the agreement in front of you, and you look on page 6, Article 13, there is a withdrawal provision that basically says that you can withdraw on July 1st of any year if you've given the other members 90 days prior notice.
So you can end it sooner than 15 years.
You can end your membership as soon as, I mean, obviously, if it's just an agreement between the city and the county, that would effectively end it. If there were more agencies, then the county's withdrawal or a school's withdrawal wouldn't necessarily eliminate the agency.
So, what you said there, either agency, the city or county?
You do that.
Or if the school district joined.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think we've agreed that we're writing this to allow other agencies to potentially join in the future.
I mean, but you mean withdrawal before the 15 years?
Yes.
Yeah, but I mean, this, to me, I mean, my personal feelings is that it should be just between the city and county, especially initially, because that's the whole deal. We've each, committed to a 15-year funding, so I'm not really sure if we commit in our budget and they do the 15-year funding and then be able to have the option to say, never mind, in any particular year before that.
Well,
Seems,
that's part of the problem, Larry, is that we have to reappropriate that money every year, and that money might not be there every year. I mean, we're making, because it's just like the tobacco settlement, I mean, it's requested that we 200,000 a year, well, that tobacco settlement only goes for 12 years, but yet we've made a 15-year commitment. So you get down the final 3 years, where's that other 200,000 gonna come from?
And if indeed that's the reality the board's dealing with, then it would exercise its right under that Article 13 to say we just can't do it and it's done. I mean, the reality is you can't, we don't know what the future's gonna hold. You know, if we, like we're gonna put all this money into the teeter program because we can make fabulous interest off of it. So, you know, who knows, we may hit the jackpot and you know, this will be better than PERS in terms of our, you know, the county being able to retire on, you know, who knows? It could be the other way. We could be destitute next year. And that's where that provision is in there. And what it does is it brings things to a screeching halt. Same thing with the city across the street.
This whole thing could be terminated by the city of the county next year.
Yeah, it could be if the fiscal situation becomes so bleak, that's the inevitable thing, then the out is there for it. So, I mean, I think we should leave it to them to try to, you know, it's kind of hard to guess what our revenues are for the current year. We went through that budget process and everybody has their crystal ball, the monies that we have stashed away. And we know where we are today, but you saw the game, I mean, between, you know, the budget committee starting meeting earlier this year through, you know, the budget sessions convening, you know, we were all over the map and we had a lot of tentative numbers and, you know, a lot of them, you know, proved to be good and some proved to be bad, and instead of being 3 million, we were 1.9 million. I mean, it moves daily. So
in reality, everybody could bring it up 200,000, the city puts up 200,000, 2 years from now, the pool's constructed, and the city pulls out, or the county pulls out, and the pool's shut down.
it could temporarily be shut down. That could be the case. But the folks who make that decision at that time will have to make their case to the public and as to why and how. And if they, it's like, I guess, I don't know, I want to make the foreign policy.
Let's take a 5-minute recess.
He's gone.
I think he had some urgent business.
It wasn't me.
Let's put it this way,
Nothing personal.
it's a good idea, but it's not quite as urgent for me.